The Xenophage isn't a solo act. It represents a whole alien species. Surprisingly, these aliens are pretty advanced, even though they act like wild hunters when they're on the prowl for their favorite snack, symbiotes. And what really tickles their taste buds is the brain of the person hosting the symbiote. You see, the longer someone's been bonded with a symbiote, the more their brain releases dopamine in a part called the substantia nigra for the xenophage. That's like adding extra flavor. So folks like Eddie Brock, who hosted the Venom symbiote for a good while, are like the caviar of the xenophage world. But if a xenophage is super hungry, regular brains will still do. These aliens are smart enough to travel through space, but when it comes to hunting, they don't need any fancy weapons. They've got natural skills for tracking, stalking, battling, and chowing down on symbiotes. In this video, we will explore the 3-issue Marvel comic titled Venom, The Hunted, by Larry Hama and Duncan Rouleau. This is the only appearance of this crazy Venom villain, giving Venom a taste of his own medicine. So, without further ado, let's begin, shall we? Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Who's chomping the brains? Now, after the whole Planet of the Symbiote story arc, where lots of New Yorkers got taken over by symbiotes, and some kept them even after the symbiotes were gone, one xenophage took notice. It hopped on over to Earth for a buffet of symbiote delicacies, especially eyeing Eddie Brock. Now, coming to the comic, it begins at the Lizard Lounge, where things take a dark turn when a woman is brutally murdered and her brain is devoured. NYPD detectives Clark and Steen dive into the case. They try to enhance the surveillance footage to get a better look at the killer, but the video quality is lousy, and all they can muster is a blurry image of the culprit. This mysterious assailant has some seriously big teeth and went for the victim's brain. Detective Steen jumps to the conclusion that it's Venom on the loose. Detective Clark isn't so sure about that theory. He thinks Venom's brain-eating reputation is more talk than action. Plus, Venom fancies himself a twisted kind of hero. Still, Detective Steen insists they should go after Venom, even if it means letting the real killer slip through the cracks. Eddie Brock's in a tough spot, looking for a warm place to crash, and he is out of a real job or any healthy source of income for that matter. He decides to catch a few movies to stay off the streets. After 3 screenings, an usher's had enough and kicks Eddie out of the theater. However, the usher's got a soft side, though, and gives Eddie some cash for food. Eddie heads to the Daily Grind coffee shop to grab a bite. Meanwhile, detectives call in Dr. Ashley Kafka and Dr. Camille Pazzo for their expertise with symbiotes. These shrinks check out the evidence and don't see why Venom would suddenly start offing random folks. I mean, he has always thought of himself as a hero, but Detective Steen's all gung-ho about capturing Venom, and the doctors are on board. At the Daily Grind, Eddie orders a meal from Shirley Washington and starts thinking about making some cash. His secret hideout's been blown, and he needs a new place to crash. Just as he's about to dig into his meatloaf, Ben Reilly, who's also Spider-Man, shows up for his shift. Eddie senses the web-slinger's presence. Not intending to invite problems, he makes a quick exit. However, Ben knows Eddie was there but can't ditch his job to chase him down. Eddie's got some inner struggles going on. He made a promise to his ex-wife, Anne Wang, that he wouldn't go on a killing spree, let alone kill Spider-Man. She's willing to take him back if he ditches his alien side for good, but it's not as easy as it sounds. Venom would just not give up Eddie so easily, and even if Venom did that, was that really something that Brock wanted? Anyway, meanwhile, the heat on Eddie intensifies. Doctors Kafka and Pazzo are at the police HQ, talking to reporter Trish Tilby. Things get a bit heated when they're asked about the brain-chomping killer. Detective Steen swoops in and takes charge, insisting that Venom's the murderer and the NYPD's gonna get him. Dr. Pazzo doesn't quite agree with Steen, reminding Detective Clark that they don't actually know who the killer is. Meanwhile, Eddie's had enough of feeling sorry for himself. He knows he's got to protect innocent folks, so he suits up as Venom and hits the streets. Over in another part of town, a woman named Donna is getting ready for a night out. Her sudden return surprises her roommate, Xena, who is in the shower. Donna heads out, thinking about how naive Xena is and how she's in over her head. Donna, on the other hand, knows the score. She jumps in her car and continues her search in the city. While Venom's on patrol, he busts up an armed robbery at a bodega. He's confused when people start running away in fear, not realizing he's a wanted man. Back at the cop bar called the Minstrel Boy, Detective Clark and Dr. Pazzo are sharing info. She tells him about her run-ins with symbiotes like Carnage, but she doesn't think Venom's the cold-blooded killer here. She has a theory that the stress of being a fugitive might be messing with Eddie Brock's head. Maybe he's dealing with schizophrenia, and there's another personality inside him that's capable of murder. The catch is, Eddie might not even know about these multiple personalities. Their chat gets cut short by Detective Steen, who brings news that the mayor's given the green light to use police choppers to hunt down Venom. While all this is happening, Xena's having a quiet evening watching TV solo. Little does she know, the killer's just broken into her place. Attacked by these creepy tentacles, Xena desperately reaches for the phone to call the cops. She manages to get through to 911 dispatchers, but all they can do is listen in horror as the killer takes Xena's life. The next morning, Eddie's on a rooftop, pondering his next move to get his life back on track. Suddenly, he's spotted by a police chopper. The officer recognizes Eddie and orders him to surrender, not wanting to face the handcuffs. Eddie goes full Venom mode and escapes from the police chopper amid a barrage of bullets. That's where the first issue ends. The Stalker. Venom's now a fugitive, with the NYPD hot on his tail and military-grade helicopters in the mix. While Venom's dodging the law, Detectives Clark and Steen are on the scene of the latest brain-eating killer victim, Xenophage. Outside, Xena's roommate, Donna, rolls up with her pal George, connecting the dots that Xena's the latest victim and deciding they're going to hunt down the killer. On the other side of the chaos, Venom's escape has caught the attention of some young skateboarders. Piqued with curiosity, they decide to tail Venom. Venom tries to shoo them away. Well, he is worried for their safety. I mean, he knows that he's not the safest guy for kids to hang around with. At the same time, Detectives Clark and Steen got word of Venom's presence in the area and hit the gas in their unmarked police car, hot on Venom's trail. But things are about to get nasty and interesting. Much like it happens in most of the Venom stories, the chase goes on, and one of the skateboarders, Binky, ends up in the path of an oncoming truck. Venom steps in and saves the kid, of course. This allows the detectives to catch up with him, but Venom wouldn't be who he is if he did not know how to dodge a couple of detectives, right? So, he slips under the truck, and with the help of his symbiote, he transforms into a skateboarder, using Binky's gear as a disguise. Not surprisingly, Eddie's act works, and he manages to fool the officers into thinking Venom's given them the slip. With the skateboarders impressed by Rad Eddie, they clue him in on an upcoming skateboarding competition with a $500 prize. Eddie, needing some cash, decides to join the contest, thinking it's a way to solve his money troubles. As Donna and George stealthily investigate the crime scene, they discover the truth about themselves. Well, all three of them are hosts for symbiotes. Donna's symbiote is Venom's offspring, while George and Xena's symbiotes came to Earth as refugees during a prior symbiote invasion. Their heightened emotion lead to a heated argument about how to deal with the creature responsible for killing those bonded to symbiotes. It dawns on them that the alien predator, known as the Xenophage, is still lurking in the apartment. They are soon overpowered by the Xenophage, which attempts to make a meal out of them. Meanwhile, Rad Eddie clinches an easy victory in the skateboarding competition, pocketing the $500 prize. A little while later, Binky shows up, demanding the return of his skateboarding gear. However, Eddie doesn't want to give it away because he is quite taken with the equipment, so Eddie decides to purchase it from Binky using some of his winnings. Detectives Steen and Clark arrive at the scene to question Rad Eddie once more. Brock maintains his composure as the police officers get dangerously close to unveiling his disguise. However, Detective Steen receives a call from forensics about another body found at the murder scene of Xenophage. They rush back to the crime scene, leaving Eddie Brock under arrest and confined to the back of their squad car. Upstairs, they find George's lifeless body in a manner identical to Xena's fate. Both victims have had their brains consumed. Down on the street, Eddie decides to masquerade as a uniformed police officer to gather information, but Detective Steen has sought authorization from the mayor to initiate something called Operation Decibel, which would basically involve flooding the entirety of NYC with a cacophony of noise from air raid sirens, church bells, and whistles. The overwhelming sonic assault causes excruciating pain to Venom, who is compelled to shed his disguise. Weakened, the symbiote struggles against the officers attempting to subdue him. Detectives Steen and Clark arrive, attempting to regain control, when they confront the Xenophage, who has Donna as its captain. Like the A-Train, Issue 3, as Venom strives to uncover the truth behind the framing for the series of serial murders committed by someone else, he finds himself debilitated by the relentless sonic assault from New York City's air raid sirens. This leaves him vulnerable to the continued sonic onslaught from police officers utilizing whistle, bullhorns, and air horns. It is now that we first see the glimpse of our friend Xenophage, whom we'll call Phage. So, Phage leaps from one of the recent crime scenes and attacks Venom. This was not just two enemies battling each other for supremacy. Phage reveals its insatiable appetite for consuming symbiotes and has journeyed to Earth to feast on the symbiotes residing here. During their intense battle, Venom realizes that Phage has taken Donna, one of the symbiotes linked to the Life Foundation. Despite Venom's valiant efforts, he is eventually incapacitated when Phage administers a neurotoxin that paralyzes symbiotes. Of course, Phage had come prepared. I mean, he eats symbiotes for breakfast, quite literally. So it's not surprising that he has a few tricks up his sleeves. Not far from the scene, Detective Steen and Clark bear witness to the confrontation, while Detective Steen remains convinced that Venom is responsible for the wave of serial killings. Detective Clark's doubts about Venom being the villain become stronger. He has started to firmly believe that Venom is the good guy, albeit a bit deranged. While Steen prepares her officers with high-powered weaponry, Clark contacts Dr. Yao at the coroner's office to gather more information about the serial killer's victims. The situation becomes increasingly intricate as a skateboard, discovered in one of the squad cars, attracts the detectives' attention. They promptly dismiss the skateboard, handing it over to a youngster named Jerry, who had been observing the unfolding events from a distance. Jerry recognizes the skateboard as the same one that a man identifying himself as Rad Eddie had purchased from his friend Binky during a recent skateboard competition. Without hesitation, Jerry contacts his friends to alert them that Rad Eddie is in jeopardy, which convinces the skateboarders to unite in their quest to track down the alien responsible for Venom's abduction. In the meantime, Donna manages to regain her composure and attempts to resist Phage once more, only to succumb to another neurotoxin. Suddenly, a military helicopter on loan to the NYPD locates the trio and initiates gunfire. As the skateboarders and detectives draw closer to Phage's location, the alien seeks refuge in a nearby subway station with its intended victims. Detective Steen issues orders for her officers to secure the area, but the skateboarders manage to elude them and pursue their friend. With Phage boarding the A-train, the youths vault over the turnstiles and board the departing train. Meanwhile, Detective Clark establishes contact with Dr. Yao, who reveals that all the victims had been harboring symbiotes stranded on Earth since their failed invasion. Nevertheless, Detective Steen remains resolute in her pursuit and directs her forces to trail the speeding A-train. Back atop the subway train, Venom is not having it anymore and does all he can to prevent becoming Phage's easy meal and defends himself. He does so not only to preserve his own existence, but also to shield Donna from the predatory creature. Observing the gravity of the situation and the grim and dangerous scenario that Rad Eddie was in, two skateboarders ascend to the train's roof, eager to offer assistance. When Phage threatens the children, Venom tries to counter the threat, but is thrust into the train's driver's compartment. As the driver endeavors to halt the train, Venom insists they continue moving forward. As the battle between Donna and Phage rages on, Venom clambers to the front of the train as they approach the next station. Positioned there are the police, prepared for their arrival. An overeager officer, hoping to target Venom, removes the pin from a white phosphorus grenade. However, as the train swiftly passes by, Venom seizes the opportunity to grab the live grenade. He uses his own symbiote to entice Phage away from Donna, who has suffered severe injury, when Phage took a chunk out of the symbiote. But, of course, this was a trick, and Phage was oblivious to the grenade it now held. Tragically, the explosive device detonates within Phage's body, incinerating the creature. With the threat neutralized, Venom reverts to his Rad Eddie disguise and successfully evades Detectives Steen and Clark as the train reaches its next stop. Before his departure, Rad Eddie discloses Donna's dire need for immediate medical attention to Detective Clark. When asked about the skateboarder's uncanny presence at critical incidents, Rad Eddie attributes it to luck, revealing his symbiotic teeth as he takes his leave. So, yeah, he lets the detective in on his little secret because he knows that the detective trusts him as a good guy. Does Phage have similar traits like Xenomorph? To be honest, the Xenomorphs and Xenophage do not have a lot of similarities. Yes, they are both alien creatures who hunt down other species, but everything about the two organisms is quite different. You see, their reproductive methods, their eating habits, nothing matches. You can make the argument that we do not know much about the Xenophages, but I would like to assume that they are pretty different, technologically way more advanced, and more intelligent than our biomechanical monsters. How powerful is Xenophage? Xenophages are quite the shapeshifters, akin to symbiotes in their ability to transform their form, size, and texture. In the case of the Xenophage that pursued Venom, it could cleverly masquerade as a china cabinet, even complete with dishes and glassware. Remarkably, it managed to conceal the entire body of an incapacitated scream within its bulk. Additionally, Xenophages sport an armored exoskeleton, devoid of pain receptors, providing robust defense against conventional weaponry. Beyond their imposing size and exceptional strength, these creatures can exhale a fiery neurotoxin chemical that induces paralysis in symbiotes while, strangely, enhancing the flavor of their victims. So, that was all from our end in this video. If you have some suggestions about characters like Xenophage that we should cover, please feel free to let us know in the comments. It may take us some time, but we will eventually honor the request.